Hello, welcome to a cup final special of Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Caw. I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how are you?
Well. Look, it'd be wrong to say that nobody saw this coming or that nobody called it or that nobody suggested that it could happen, because it's been building. St Mirren dropped off after the semi-final win over Motherwell, but they were so good on the day at Hampden that day that you knew they would give Celtic a real game of this. They stopped it all, got a couple of results to build momentum going into the game today. And I have to tell you, mixed there, obviously. But for me, once again, Celtic's new manager has just been tactically, completely and utterly outmanoeuvred. And that's a real worry. That's got to be a huge concern. I might be wrong, Mick, but from watching it on TV, I could almost see the holes in Celtic's lineup from here.
As you say, Michael Gannon joins us from Hampden, Mick.
I do. Wow, what a day. I mean, incredible. I mean, listen, there's obviously there's two sides to this whole story today. I thought St Mirren were out of this world.
Yeah.
Absolutely sensational. And Celtic, in contrast, were cosmically awful. I mean, absolutely abysmal. One team that was organised, well drilled, pragmatic, just effective, and another side that was disorganised and ineffective. I mean, it was the real contrast in styles, and the right winners eventually. At the end of the day, I think St Mirren deserved to win the trophy. This is no smash and grab victory. No. At times, I mean, Celtic were lucky to be 1 down. At times, they got back into the game, and in the second half, obviously Celtic were kind of pushing guys forward, but they were always vulnerable on the counter. And I think it's a brilliant reward first of all for Stephen Robinson and St Mirren. This has been a real golden period in the club's history. They've had top sixes, European football. This is the kind of culmination of a golden period for St Mirren and a golden generation for the manager. I mean, a fully deserved for Stephen Robinson, a top operator for a long time. And I think he deserves this moment. I was going to say in the sun, because it's definitely not sunny here. It's freezing and it's wet and windy. But you can see it meant to him at the end as well. And listen, fair play to him. He's fully deserved it for his work he's done. What a job he's done at St Mirren. I mean, a guy who's got one of the best eye for a player in Scottish football. He puts together these squads on very little money. He finds little gems in the lower leagues in England, and they come up trumps. And it's a real day to savour for St Mirren. Some party in Fraser tonight. Is Fury Money still open, by the way? He was swinging by the other night.
I think, Mick, the thing is with St Mirren, you know, they do the Ron seal, aren't they? You know what you're going to get. They do what they say in the tin. People have actually, I've heard people, speaking in very uncomplimentary terms about the way they play football. I think the way they play football is absolutely fine. I think they make the most of their talents. I like the fact that they've got physical guys in advanced areas of the pitch. I like the fact that you know exactly what you're going to get from them. And I also, from Stephen Robinson's perspective, I really like the fact that he went away, he looked at Columbus Crew, he studied some video, the same as Derek McInnes did, and he devised a plan, and he knew exactly what to do to combat Celtic and to give them issues in key parts of the pitch. He absolutely did it. It was glaringly obvious. But as much as there will be a kind of post-mortem now into Wilfred Nancy and Celtic, I think you're absolutely spot on, Mick. Enormous credit to St Mirren. They were terrific in the semi-final, and they were every bit as good, if not a little bit better today. I thought there was a period in the first half when it did feel as if you were getting the first look at what Nancy wants Celtic to look like. And it was overloads. I mean, you've got Liam Scales, overlapping Kieran Tierney down the left-hand side. You've got bodies in wide areas. You've got, but always was, you're sitting watching that going, well, they're wide open. They are so wide open at the back. And St Mirren have got the players to capitalise on that and punish them. So it was similar to the way that Hearts did it. It's rope-a-dope stuff. It's really basic rope-a-dope stuff. But that takes nothing away from St Mirren. They survived that period in the first half, and I thought they were head and shoulders above Celtic in the second half. They completely dominated the second half of that cup final today and were well worthy winners. If the first half was a bit eachy peachy, second half belonged to St Mirren, and Celtic are fortunate that there was only 3-1 in the end.
Yeah, I thought St Mirren had a big performances all over the pitch. I mean, Alex Gogic in the middle. I mean, absolutely sensational. Throwing Celtic tackles, winning, crunching balls, making blocks, making passes, keeping the possession, and then with the pass for the second goal. I mean, we've seen some moments of skill this old ground in the last few weeks. There's another one, absolutely sensational. Clip ball outside the boot. I thought he was brilliant. Marcus Fraser, brilliant. I thought the two boys up front, Younga and Lundulu, outstanding, ragdolling defenders all over the park. I thought they were terrific.
Yeah.
And Celtic, in terms of Celtic, I think you're looking at the way they play, and you like you're talking about these overloads and centre halves that bomb forward and overlap in the kind of the wing backs and all this kind of stuff. Ridiculously risky. It was almost like, I mean, like we're talking about Ange Ball, and then I've heard someone say this is Ange Ball on steroids. This is Ange Ball on LSD.
Ange Ball and magic mushroom.
Honestly, it is. It left Celtic so exposed. I mean, at times they were man for man against two big, robust strikers who were bouncing off guys and rolling them. It caused a world of problems. Like I say, it could have been 2 or 3 down in the first 15 minutes. Celtic. Listen, when they've got possession, they've got bodies forward, and they can pile into it. They are going to cause teams problems. Again, they need personnel to do this job, but Nancy doesn't have the personnel to play this way right now. And what I can't understand, okay, you give them the Hearts game, right, okay, you want to play your own way, fair enough. You go into Roma and you think, well, okay, doing it again against a team like Roma's calibre seemed a wee bit silly, but okay. Then you look at the team sheet today and you think, well, no, he's had a change of heart, he's going to play a back four. It looks like a back four he's picking here. But then you see the game starting and it's the back three that is a 4 or a 5 in defence, and Sebastian Tenecki playing outside right. You think, well, he played for Tunisia there 3 weeks ago and got hooked after half time. They've been so bad on that side, not great. Tony Ralston, who never lets anyone down really, but he's playing right centre back at times today. It's very strange. And you start to think, well, surely as a manager, you look at what you've got and then pick your team accordingly to play a certain way, rather than saying, I play this way, we're going to pick a team to go with the way I play. And Stephen Wilkes must be sitting up his hands, because the way he actually plays, and you're saying that he studied like Columbus Crew, I'm sure he did, but he must have been thinking, even weeks ago, the way they play suits us to a T. We don't need to change anything. This will suit us to a T. And it looks like Celtic haven't looked at St Mirren. It looked like they hadn't looked at Roma, and they hadn't looked at Hearts. That's what it looks like. It looks like they haven't looked at opposition. It looks like, is that what I'm looking at now? Is like after only 3 games, the manager's up against it. But has he been ridiculously naive, thinking that his players can combat anyone and play a certain way, or is he the arrogance to think that as well? Or is it naivety or arrogance? But what he's done is he's put himself right up against it, because he's lost his first 3 games, including a cup final, and the potential is now for Celtic to get even worse. The run of fixtures now are really tough. There's injuries are piling up again. Nacho gets half an hour and he limps off. Again, another one of these signings. The guy who's obviously got ability, but his fitness is way short. Inevitably, he's not going to last beyond that period anyway, so that's another one. And you think, what Celtic have managed to do to get to this situation is actually quite remarkable, really. From a position of power to get into this state is mind-blowing, really.
So quickly, Mick, so quickly.
Yeah. It's a case study. Celtic are a case study in how to, disembowel your own football club. It's quite incredible. And I think, and I'm going to be really interested, Mick, to see what you think about this. The reaction to this. Where is Wilfred Nosey at this point in time? And I don't mean the geography of the stadium at Hampden Park. How does he recover? Can he recover? I personally felt going into the 3 games, you can almost give him a pass for Hearts, because he'd only just touched down in the country, didn't have a lot of time to prepare. I felt the change, throwing away everything that Martin O'Neill had put in place to make Celtic a winning formula. I thought there was a touch of arrogance, maybe intransigence about that. Big call, didn't work well for him. Roma, people are battering him over the head with no Celtic manager's ever lost his first 2 games. No Celtic manager's second game has ever been against Roma in the Europa League. So I think you've got to, use that as a bit of context to that. But of these 3 games, there was one that he simply could not even contemplate losing, and that's the one that he just lost 3-1 at Hampden today. And I wonder where it leaves him, Mick.
Well, that's what I said last week. The first 2 you give him a free pass. We had to win this one, and not only did they not win this one, they lost it in fairly shambolic fashion as well. I mean, again, at times the team did not look organised.
Well,
And
the
it's
players
like,
don't look as if they know what they're being asked to do, Mick.
no, this is what I'm saying. And listen, I said it right from the start. You've got to give a guy a chance. And I thought, right, this is an interesting profile that could suit Celtic. But it's one of those ones, a bit like the Iron situation, that they're given 5 weeks in pre-season and given a transfer window. Yeah, I could see that perhaps working. Coming in at this stage and trying to do all this in this week just looks ridiculous. Just looks like a crazy decision, really. I mean, the thing was, right, and I know for a fact Celtic approached Wilfred Noncy the same week that Rodgers left. So we're talking over a month ago, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So he's had 5 weeks or 4 weeks to look and analyse this squad from afar, to talk to people in and around the team and in the building. So he must have known that there are serious structural problems with this team, and they were playing a certain way under Martin O'Neill for a reason.
Yeah.
Because of the problems they've got in terms of personnel, in terms of injuries. So to be armed with all that knowledge, after 3 weeks of sitting waiting to get the job, to then come in and apply this ideology immediately, just seems like a ridiculous gamble. I mean, nobody would hold it against them if he said, I'm going to play 4-5-1 and try and get through this month, because that's what he had to do.
Yeah.
But to come in and try and enforce your own personal strategy, and listen, at times I'm wary of managers that have ideologies and strategies, because a manager should be flexible to play any situation, any strategy. Mm-hmm. And that's what Celtic have had. I mean, people talk about Brendan Rodgers having his 4-4-3, but Brendan Rodgers has changed formations many times over the years. He's 815 games as a manager. Martin O'Neill has played every formation known to man, and he did do in the last 6 weeks. They're flexible, they're adaptable, and they play the cards that have been dealt. Whereas not just come in and he's tried to play a hand that he's not got, and it's backfired big time on him. And he's in a world of pain, because he's got the supporters who are thinking, what is this we've got here? And he's now heading into a period when not only is the League Cup now gone, the league could follow behind it, because it's they're a really bad way. They like to say that the squad doesn't look to have been. I'm not saying there's not been buy-in, because I think the players look as though they're trying to do it, but they just don't seem to know what's required. Again, we saw Luke McCowan across at the end there. They didn't really know what he was playing.
Well, Mick, there was an example in the first half. There was an example in the first half when Nonce is actually jumping up and down on the sidelines, shaking his hands, waving his hands, and to get the attention of Cal McGregor. Cal McGregor goes over to him. They talk something. They obviously talking about tactics. He's obviously pointing out tweaks that he wants changed. Cal McGregor goes back onto the pitch. He was surrounded by about 4 or 5 of them. They're all having a conversation, and it looked. Look, we don't know what was said, but they all looked confused.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem now that can't be happening. You can't be in a cup final against a St Mirren side looking for the first domestic trophy, and players are having to have conference calls during the first half to work out where it is that they're meant to be in the pitch.
No.
That's a horror story, and the optics are really, really bad.
This is, I mean, I think it's fine if you got 4 weeks in pre-season to drill it into players, like Postecoglou did when he first arrived, and changed things, and he drilled it in a certain way. We play this way. If you don't like it, you're out the door. And you can do that because you're in the summer. You can make your mistakes in friendlies, whatever, and you can buy in players to fit your system. Not in the first week in December when you've got games coming thick and fast. I think you have to be more realistic. And this pragmatic word that gets thrown around, that's what you do. You have to adapt to your surroundings. And that's not what he's done in week one. He's been in, tried to enforce his own way of playing, and it's confused the life of most of the team. They don't seem to. I think the one player that seemed to suit was Kelechi Iheanacho, who I thought was actually pretty lively for his play.
And did well on Thursday night as well.
Yeah, but he's a guy that can't be relied on. Clearly, he's got issues in terms of fitness, and so that's another one by the wayside. I just think he's made life really hard for himself, Noncy. I don't think any less when we come in and say, I'll stick to what we're doing and try and get through this period, because that's what was required.
Mick, nail in the head, right? And I'll give you another example of that where it's just ridiculously complicated. So he makes the decision to stick with the back three, but he puts Tony Ralston in to the right-hand side, right? Square peg, round hole. okay? But in order to do that, that then sets about a chain reaction of dominoes falling in other parts of the pitch. You have to move Kieran Tierney from the left central role out to left wing back. You have to then switch Tuneki from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. You put on Ian Acho, that means you're asking Dyson Maida to take up a new role that he's never played before, although he's played a lot of roles in this Celtic side. You know, playing as a 10 behind the 9 has not been one of them, and that's what he was. It was him and Hatate were the two that were kind of basically charged with getting up the most advanced players in that box of 4 that he likes in the midfield. But in order, do you know what I mean? There was a simple way of doing it, and there's a complicated way of doing it. So to put Tony Ralston into the team, you're then having to move 4 and 5 different players around, and I struggled with it as soon as I saw the starting 11, and I didn't think for a single second he was going to go back 4. And you kind of got the big clue was that Tony Ralston come on and played on that right hand side of the 3 against Rome, and I think that's been in the manager's head since then. And if that meant making 3 or 4 other positional tweaks and changes, well, so be it. That's not a great plan.
This is what I said the other night. I mean, I've said it a few times now that Celtic don't have the players to play really in any formation right now. They just don't have. They're going to miss in somewhere. But what Martin Hill did was he said, right, okay, well, I'll have one square peg in a round hole with McCown out wide right.
Yeah.
The rest of them are all playing in their positions that they know, and that we might get by with that. And listen, in speaking to McCown, he said, I didn't think I played particularly great, but he done a job for the team in that role, and it wasn't perfect, but it was a bit more structured.
Yeah.
But this is not structured. This is chaotic. And there's too many. I mean, he's been unfortunate, in the fact he's run into McInnes and Robinson his first 2 domestic games. 2 guys who know how to organise their teams, and they take advantage of disorganisation, and they have done. They've pounced on disorganisation. And at the moment, Celtic, at one point, again, they're not just starting off a formation I think doesn't suit them at this point in time. They're changing formation sometimes in game to further get away from a structure. And by the end, it looks a bit ramshackle, really.
Yeah.
It really does look ramshackle.
I tell you that the worry from a Celtic perspective as well, for Nancy's perspective, is, you know, who's standing there in the TV gantry watching that game today? Jim Goodwin. Next up for Celtic, Dundee United away. Yeah. And Goodwin's another one that comes into that category of experienced managers, tactically clever, flexible. You'll be watching that today. There's no way he's not driving up the road, rubbing his hands at the prospect of putting his team up against that. No way he's not. No way he's not.
He's about 20 yards in front of me now, smiling. Actually, I can see him.
It won't surprise you guys to know we've got a flood of comments coming in on mainly Celtic, but one guy that I just want to give a wee minute to, Mick, as well, that we didn't mention in the St Mirren team. I thought Shamal George was outstanding today. Absolutely,
he's a cracking goalkeeper anyway. I think he's superb anyway. I'm a real big fan of his. He had a great save early on, a really crucial save from Iniacho's header. It was an important moment as well.
That was a great save.
I think he's a cracking big keeper. I really do. A good presence, makes big saves. He has a wee moment, and again, every few weeks he might have a wee kind of please. But no, I think he's another one that's been that I thought he was good at Livingston as well. He's another manager that's got a good eye for a player. Dave Martindale at Livingston.
Yeah.
And Robinson, who I said before, has just got a tremendous eye for a player and getting the best. I mean, big in Ndulu coming from on loan from first from Bolton, he was at Cheltenham Town. All these kind of guys at the lower leagues in England, he digs out, they go and do a turn from him. I mean, superb. In contrast to Celtic, who waste money on, let's face it, dross. I mean, Celtic who have spent fortunes and not very good players, which I think is also going to be. I mean, the manager is going to be getting an absolute pile of flack, an avalanche of flack after this. But I think a lot of people are going to start looking up the food chain as well again. And it's
well, you heard the chance again, Mick. You know, it was ringing around the place again.
Yeah, but listen. The elephant in the room for me is that Celtic. Let's rewind back to June, right? And there must have been a time when Dermot Desmond said it himself that they said to Brendan Rodgers back in June, let's talk about a new contract. There wasn't one on the table, but they said, let's talk about a new contract, right? So you go from that situation in June with a manager who'd won 11 trophies out of 13 at Celtic and planning for the future. what has happened since June that you've chased a manager, I keep saying it, an 815 game experienced manager at the top flight, out the building,
annihilating him on his way,
nuked him on the way out the door because they're not happy what he's demanded to improve a squad that he warned back in March was on the wane. He said back in March, I sat there at McDermott Park when he said, this is a warning, guys, we need to change things in the summer because some of these guys are coming at the end of the line with this squad, we need some more quality, etc. It wasn't listened to. They made a massive falling out over the summer. Then you get a manager as a caretaker who's got 970 odd games as a manager, who wins games, and then you say thanks a lot and let him go as well. So he now said goodbye to nearly 2,000 games worth of experience to bring in a rookie from MLS and parachute him in December into a squad that's badly lacking all over the pitch, had money wasted on players that aren't good enough, and an injury list as long as a phone book. And then you wonder why it's all going wrong.
And by the way, Mick, you have to have
a lot to answer to.
You have to have that conversation. When you're making that appointment, you have to have the conversation with Wilfred Nancy along the lines of, right, Wilfred, we understand that you've got a set way of playing. Are you going to come in and you're going to implement that from the start? Because Martin's actually been in, he's been holding the fort, stabilised, 7 wins out of 8. You've got to know as the board at that minute in time if this guy is going to come in and throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is exactly what he did do. And the board has to take a certain degree of responsibility for that because they ultimately made the decision to put him into this. And they must have known that that's what he was going to do. He was going to ignore everything that Martin O'Neill had laid down to make Celtic fit and functioning and competitive and winning games of football. Yeah. So on every level, it just becomes harder and harder to understand it.
Yeah, and it also had extra. I mean, even I thought the profile of Nancy for where Celtic are right now, and the kind of the way the search for managers are for Celtic and for Rangers right now, who they can attract, what they can afford to pay. Excuse me. I think, well, you know what? I like the idea of it. I think his profile sounded quite good. Again, nowhere near. Listen, but you got to say Rodgers and to an extent O'Neill are outliers because Celtic don't get those kind of managers unless they've got an affinity with the club. Brendan Rodgers is a Premier League manager in England every day of the week. He will be again probably soon. So you don't get that unless he's got that affinity with the club. So I get that it's a bit of an outlier. Again, quite why they don't keep him happy. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to keep that, but that ship sailed. But even then, the dithering, I mean, the week of negotiations with the Columbus Crew over compensation. I mean, I lost a week, and then it lost another week because then you have to go through the visa process, which can be notoriously bad post Brexit and all that kind of stuff. So it lost another week. So when he came in the door during that international break, spending 2 weeks at least assessing and formulating his playing style then with some of the players, and then came in a few games that were slightly less high profile than the ones he's run into, had to wait, and his first game's against Hearts, and he's up against it right from the off. So the timeline get knocked out again by poor decision making as well. So the Celtic at this point in time seem to be they can do no right for doing wrong.
Yeah.
Even when they make decisions that I think on paper look like decent decisions, that I think Nancy on paper and a June appointment would be sounds to me like a risky but maybe exciting appointment. Do it now, not so much. Now it looks absolute chaos. So every decision they make, even the right ones are wrong. Do you know what I mean? This is on the back of the summer when they were warned that the squad was weak going into the Champions League qualifiers, and they paid the price for that one. Saw 40 million quid go down the drain. Then broke down with the manager. I mean, compounding bad mistakes with worse mistakes, and now they've got themselves in a massive hole that I don't know how they get out of really.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a plethora of Celtic fans want to have their say, guys. I know you might have post-match duties, Mick, but if I can run through a couple of these before we let you go, that would be great, if that's okay. Ross says, any Celtic fan still backing this manager is living in cloud cuckoo land. He has to go tonight, doesn't matter at what cost. Marzuno says, anyone that claims the MLS is a decent level hasn't watched any of it. He's played at a walking pace. Nancy's out of his depth and he talks nonsense. Sorry. Davey says, Paul Tisdale just signed the Celtic version of Russell Martin. At this rate, he'll be gone by Christmas and Hearts will be out of sight. Francis says he turned a team that was in a 7-8 game winning run to absolute shambles. This is nothing but a disgrace by the board. Heads must roll. Lol, Nicholson, Tisdale out. And Craigie Isn't Home Back says, if Nancy isn't sacked tomorrow, I refuse to go back to Parkhead till he's gone. The season ticket will be thrown out. John simply says, someone sack the board, someone needs to be accountable. And just to round it up, James very simply says, I hope Martin O'Neill hasn't made Christmas plans.
Yeah, Home Alone 2. Do you know what? I do wonder what was going through Martin O'Neill's head today, sitting somewhere watching that cup final, knowing that he'd done, he'd been a major contributor to the fact that Celtic got to the final. It was all set up, wasn't it? That sometimes in football you get these things and it feels like the storyline is written, and that storyline felt written. I remember Euro '96. Was it Ali McCoy's to just come off the bench against England at Wembley, and we get the penalty, and you think, there's McCoy, he's just fallen into this headline of the year award. This story's written for him. Of course, he didn't take the penalty. Gary McAllister did. Rest is history. That felt very much like a moment for Martin O'Neill. After he got Celtic to this cup final, you just felt that it was almost written. What an opportunity for the guy to come back after 20 years and put another trophy in the cabinet. It just felt as if that was what should happen. It was fated to happen. But Celtic ripped that one up as well. So, staggering.
This is what I'm saying, but this is like, even their good decisions are becoming bad ones. I mean, it's like, so, I know, listen, people slag me off about the Rodgers thing, but I mean, I thought it was ridiculous when chasing him out the door. But to go from that and say, okay, appointing Martin O'Neill was a good decision, but then even that has been handled badly. Do you know what I mean? It's like by letting it went on too long, and then when it went on too long, it was the wrong thing to do, the wrong timing to let it go. But not only that, I think they've lost Sean Maloney and Mark Fotheringham, who I know had made a really good impression on the squad.
Yeah.
And listen, and people were oversimplifying the work that Martin O'Neill did, saying, oh, he's back to basics, he's just been direct and all that stuff. Nonsense, right? Because these two guys behind the scenes are really modern coaches who work with the best players in Europe. Sean Maloney worked with Kevin De Bruyne recently, telling him where to play. Yeah. So these guys are smart, modern thinking coaches. This wasn't like Big Sam trying to beat the relegation. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like that. They were smart guys, and I think it'd be well received amongst the squad. So they lost that as well. So it wasn't just Martin's obviously the figurehead of this, who had kind of helped lighten the mood. Whether or not Martin O'Neill was a long-term solution for the job, I don't know. Because I mean, he said to some of us guys privately and publicly as well that the scheduling, the amount of games, they're coming thick and fast. If a guy at 73, it
was a lot.
It might be a bit. I remember being in Denmark and he said he was shat at that point. It's a bit much. So that felt short term, but maybe the other two might not have been short term. But like I say, I don't have a problem with the Nancy appointment at the right time, but this is not the right time. And they've paid a hell of a price for it. I mean, this week has been fairly catastrophic for Celtic, and it's put this new manager in a position where he's right up against it now. I mean, he's lost. He's not so much won over the support. He's lost them already. I said a board that was already under fire is now getting flamed left, right, and centre. And against this backdrop, they've got to try and salvage the season. I don't know if it's possible at this stage.
Well, the Celtic supporters not kind of rally round Wilfred Nosey. I think the Celtic supporters will, obviously the goodwill's there, they obviously want him to succeed. Will they not rally round him a little bit and understand this has just been a really chaotic start and he's been shoehorned, wedged right into the thick end?
To an extent, I think he might escape the real vitriol. But in terms of watching a team looking a wee bit shambolic on the pitch, that's not going to cut it.
No.
Really. I mean, and listen, for all we're talking about Celtic and injuries and all that stuff and gaps in their squad, the team out there today, I mean, is still worth 10 times the St Mirren squad.
Yeah.
Still worth 5 times the Hearts squad.
Yeah.
In Roma, you take that to the side as separate. So you can't tell me Celtic have got a squad that can beat St Mirren on any given day. I mean, you can't tell me. I mean, Harley Hengels is 11 million quid. I mean, Iniacho is played at the highest level in England and Europe. I mean, there's guys all over the park, big money signings. Trusty, 6 million quid. Janecki, 5 million quid. Guy Balak on the bench, 5 million quid.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that's spent a lot of money spent on it, and they should have man-for-man players that can beat St Mirren. So the manager can't escape criticism for that because he's not beat but get thumped.
And you could have driven a horse and carriage through his team the way it was set up today, the same as it was against Roma, the same as it was against Hearts. So yeah, I get it, Mike. There is reason for the Celtic fans to be pretty highly alarmed by what they've seen so far.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean kicking back to Martin O'Neill, we said we'll one square peg in the round hole, but the rest of the guys, man for man, I know that guy is in theory better than the guy you're playing against. And at the end of the day, usually that'll help you get the victories. Whereas currently this setup isn't going to work because it's wide open and good coaches and managers will pick holes in it as they have done this week.
I'd go as far as to say, Mick, if Lindelof doesn't miss, he's poked one wide to the near post from 5 yards about 15 minutes into the first half. If he scores that and St Mirren went 2-0 up, that could have been even worse for Celtic than it was today. Because at that point,
I'm not sure it does get much worse. I think 3-1 getting cuffed 3-1 in the final is pretty bad anyway, Keith, isn't it?
But you can feel the game completely getting away from those.
By half time. Yeah, you didn't get a chance before half time as well. Put all the bar, even at one each. It's like, it's going to be. I mean, Celtic. By the way, and I keep saying it, will get Dun United in midweek. Aberdeen, Motherwell coming up, Rangers coming up. It's not going to get any easier.
But just before we let you go, Mick, what is your gut feeling in regards to Nancy? Do you think he will turn this around? I mean, people already calling for him to be sacked in the comments, and I know social media is far from the be-all, end-all, but what's your thoughts?
Listen, I've tried to be kind of a slight voice of reason, right? But I mean, today was actually quite shocking how disorganised Celtic were. And to go not once, but twice, but 3 times trying this and failing 3 times, you think, I mean, the alarm bells are going off all over the place for supporters. Because the very best managers, you don't know what way they play. You don't go, what's Ancelotti's? Oh, he's nailed on 4-3-3. Mourinho's nailed on 4-4-2. This guy's 4-1-4-1. The best managers are adaptable and play the card. So if Celtic are bringing in a guy who's a bit of an idealist, I mean, people talk about Mirren at Man United. I mean, he's had over a year playing this way, and people telling him you need to adapt, and he's still not adapted. They may be getting a bit more joy now. Celtic managers are not going to get a year of not winning silverware or winning games. You don't get a week. You don't get a week. You're not this.
No.
So there's going to have to be a kind of a change of stance, at least until he can get through a window or two. He needs to somehow get to January and Paul Tisdale needs to have 3 or 4 players lined up early on. By the way, none of this January 31st last minute race to get players in. This is, when the bells strike midnight, there should be 3 guys sitting with big scarves above their head at Celtic Park. Is that going to happen?
3 automatic starters as well. No squad players, no project players.
That's what I mean, you're looking at spend more money. Ship out the ones that aren't going to cut it and bring it in. Spending 15-20 million quid on 4 or 5 players to go into this team that fits the vision of the manager. And the thing is for Wilfred Nancy, that's how I say it. I mean, Tannadice, Aberdeen and Motherwell and Rangers, it could be sitting here with 1 win out of 6 or 7 and all that stuff. And that's, you look at Ange Postecoglou at Nottingham Forest, another manager likes playing a certain way, coming in after the season started, couldn't get it changed quick enough, didn't cut it. But about 10 games and it gets the bullet. And you're thinking, this is the trajectory that Nancy is now on.
Yeah,
he's put, and to by the way, and I've got a lot of sympathy for him. So I think he's a manager with a lot of merit and a lot of kind of promise. But he's put himself behind the 8 ball with this start, and he's now on this trajectory that he could get 10 games in. People go, right, bad mistake.
Just pull the ball on this.
So it's I don't know where that's the thing. I don't know where it goes for Celtic right now, but I've got a feeling it's not going to get any better. And it's because of everything. It's not just the manager. It's because of the summer, because of all the things that have piled up since then. Mistake after mistake, and it's gotten to a point now where they've really got themselves into a serious mess.
Amen to that. Mick, we'll let you go back to your post-match duties. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go and see Fury Money. Just still open up in Paisley. That's going to be some night, and that's not going. What else is about it? So
let us round up here, Mick, and we'll come join you.
Mick's getting straight to Paisley.
It's going to be 80 pence a drink on a night on a Sunday night. I'm there, isn't it? I don't know.
We'll be jumping tonight. Mick, thank you very much for
I
joining
will be when Frankie Tank pulls up.
Oh, Frankie Tank's long retired, boys. Long retired.
Mick, all the best. Thanks very much.
Chap, see you later on.
Cheers,
See you,
Mick.
Michael.
Keith, we've got a lot of people in the comments saying that we're concentrating too much on Celtic.
Yeah.
You did give a big bit of praise to St Mirren, but just to go back to them, Stephen Robinson, top 6 3 years in a row, a trophy today, only the second League Cup in St Mirren's 148-year history. With all due respect to St Mirren, I'm really surprised that there hasn't been clubs coming knocking for Robinson.
And some of the players that are in that side, you every time you look at St Mirren, Godjic just kind of his head and shoulders into his what job he does for him. And funnily enough, I think that if Barry Ferguson had hung about at Rangers for the longer course last season over the summer, I think he's probably a player that Barry Ferguson would have been very interested in seeing if he could get him. And you would think that Rangers would have been able to do that deal by a St Mirren player. But yeah, look, we did say it earlier in the show, but it is important to emphasise because obviously there is a big Celtic post-mortem ongoing. But the job that Stephen Robinson has done there is borderline miraculous. And we've talked about it because to get St Mirren a top 6 finish one season is a real feat of management, good management, right? But to do it 3 consecutive seasons is extraordinary. And now you add a trophy into the mix as well. So no, listen, there's not enough words of praise that you can shower Stephen Robinson and St Mirren with. They've been exceptional. They thoroughly deserved that victory today, and it wasn't a close contest. It wasn't, and this is what I say. And it annoys me when I hear people criticise the way they play football. I like the way they play football. Nothing wrong with it. It's front-footed. It's aggressive. It's exciting. It's direct. Yes, they play to their strengths, but that's what they're supposed to do.
Well, I mean, in the comments, Keith, Doc is one saying St Mirren are hoofball and athletes. Look at Keanu Bacchus in the midfield and Killian Phillips. Brilliant footballers.
I'd stop short of brilliant, but they're very. But they come together as an excellent team. People dismiss Godjic. I think he's a really decent football player as well. And just tactically, they believe in what they're being asked to do by the manager, and that's a case in point today. As I said, there was a period in the first half when I thought it was a bit itchy peachy. Celtic were really coming into it for a 20-minute period, but Stephen Robinson made a little tactical tweak here and there for the second half, shut down Celtic's avenues down the left-hand side in particular, got a little bit closer perhaps to Callum McGregor. St Mirren absolutely played Celtic off the park for 45 minutes. It wasn't even a contest.
It was actually alarming how comfortable it was for St Mirren in that second half.
By the way, they absolutely wiped the floor on the pitch, but also on the sidelines in terms of the tactical adjustments that were made. And as I said, I can't give enough praise to St Mirren for what they've done and to Stephen Robinson. This isn't a flash in the pan. This has been coming. He's been building it, and he's been building it consistently over a period of time. And it's an exceptional piece of management.
I think credit to him. He deserves.
And by the way, I hope Kyle, our friend of the show, Kyle Gunn, I hope he can join himself tonight because I think anybody with St Mirren at heart this is a night to be enjoyed. They don't come around all that often, do they? So, Kyle and all the guys, I hope you have a good one.
Absolutely. Just to round off on Celtic, Keith, Scotland's most wanted. I picked this comment. I could have picked one of any. He says, we need to sack Nancy. It's obvious. Why delay it? Sack him now. Look, it's 3 games in. A big part of me thinks it would be absolutely...
We're not going to sack him. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, what I was going to say is 3 games in, it seems ridiculous to even contemplate going down that road. But then there's another bit of me, Keith, that looks at him and just thinks, is this guy just in the wrong movie?
Well, there could well be an element of that. That's what it looks like. And by the way, some people were absolutely slaughtered for suggesting that, very early on.
Just last week.
Yeah. Look, you know where I am with this. I agree with Ryan Stevenson in many things that he said in terms of in football these days, the trend is the blue sky thinking, coach, the guy with the strategy, the young guy. I would go a different direction from that. I'd give me an experienced manager that is tactically competent and does exactly what Martin O'Neill did, which is identify what you've got at your disposal, identify its strengths, identify the weaknesses, and then build a team to suit, bespoke to what you've got inside that dressing room. That's what I want in my managers. That's, that is ultimately the job. Here's a group of players. Make them better, improve them, put them together into a system that wins football matches. That's what I want. Don't come at me with a system or a philosophy. Not interested. I want to win football games. And I think you'll find, and I'm going to keep harping on and say it again, best manager in Scotland so far this season is Derek McInnes. And we know this to be a fact because he's sitting on top of the table. Steve Clarke has just taken Scotland to a World Cup, Scotland's most successful ever manager. Martin O'Neill gets parachuted into that absolute bin fire at Celtic, wins 7 games out of 8. How many more examples do you need? And there's again Stephen Robson, experienced guy, had Wilfred Nods in his back pocket to do tactical. So, I don't know why or when in particular that the whole world started to rush towards, give me some guy that we've never heard of, that's got 2 years managerial experience, but he's got a philosophy. I don't know when the world arrived at the conclusion that that was a good idea. And right now, you've got one guy on one side of the city at Rangers with 1 full season as a manager in his back pocket, 36-year-old, struggling with a set of circumstances which would be a real test for a really experienced manager, someone that knows the club, the Scottish football environment. And yet, Danny Rolls there having to deal with that. And now, on the other side of the city, you've got a guy a little bit older, not that much more experienced, and he looks as if he's ready to die in the hill of his philosophy. We did say, Daniel, we sat and discussed it, and I said to you, I think Celtic's best chance of the cup final will be to go at a 4 at the back, because St Mirren will find that a tougher test to play through. St Mirren must have looked at that. Stephen Robson must have been terrified that Wilfred Nodsey might have seen sense of and was going to change their 4, because his whole game plan was set up to play and pick holes in Wilfred Nodsey's philosophy, and that's exactly what St Mirren did. And as I said, they thoroughly deserved it. But it is a worry for me. A manager, first and foremost, what do you want from a manager? You want him to win games of football.
Yep.
And Wilfred Nodsey's had 3 attempts at it now, and he's had 3 scuddings. And patience will be running out, there's no doubt about it.
It's obviously been a cup final special of Hotline Live tonight. We've not talked about any of the Premiership games from the weekend. We'll do that, I imagine, tomorrow night at 6 when we're back, Keith. 1 game today, though, Aberdeen come from behind to beat Kilmarnock 2-1. I think that's 8 league games unbeaten for Aberdeen now, which is
it does feel as if a corner has been turned, and I didn't think that corner was going to get turned, which just goes to show you, because it was only a few weeks ago, wasn't it, that the Aberdeen support had seemed to be making up their mind about Jimmy Tillane, and they wanted change. I would have probably got on board with that even earlier than them. But there has been a stabilisation. And even when, Kilmarnock go ahead in that game, you're thinking, is this back into, choppy waters for Aberdeen? But no, they turn it around. They get the result. And they've got, what we did say from the start of the season, they've got some real quality players in that squad. They should be performing and getting results. But I think the kind of quality is coming at the top a little bit at Aberdeen. The quality players that they thought they were recruiting are now impacting consistently in the team, and they're all the stronger for it.
Yeah, absolutely. For now, I think that brings us to the end of our Cup Final special Hotline Live. Thank you so much for all the comments. The comments have been unbelievable. So many of them coming in. We really appreciate it. Thanks to, obviously, Michael Gannon at Hampden as well. And Keith, it's always a pleasure.
See you tomorrow, Dan.
We'll be back at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Hope you can join us then. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, Dan.